I, Jennifer, 25 years old, never thought my own family would betray me like this. The day my sister got a brand new car for graduating high school while I got slapped with a $24,000 bill for rent changed everything. They're begging for my help now, but I learned my worth the hard way. Before I dive into this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about standing up for yourself. Trust me, what happened next in this family drama will shock you. It was a perfect June afternoon. My parents had transformed our suburban backyard into a graduation wonderland for my sister Amber. Blue and white balloons, our high school colors, bobbed in the gentle breeze. A professionally printed banner with "Congratulations, graduate" hung across the patio. A catering team served gourmet appetizers to at least 50 guests, and a 3-tier cake decorated with edible graduation caps and diplomas waited on a dedicated table. I stood by the drinks table, sipping lemonade and watching my parents beam with pride as they paraded Amber around to all their friends and neighbors. She'd graduated with a modest 3.2 GPA, which was certainly an achievement, but nothing compared to my 4.0 when I graduated 7 years ago. My graduation party had been a quick dinner at Olive Garden with just the 4 of us. "Everyone, may I have your attention, please?" My father clinked his glass with a spoon, his voice booming across the yard. The chatter died down as guests turned toward him. "First, I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate our Amber's high school graduation." Cheers erupted, and Amber did a little curtsy, her graduation cap tilted perfectly on her blonde hair. "As you all know, Amber will be heading to State University this fall," my father continued, "and her mother, and I couldn't be prouder. Amber, honey, come here." My sister bounded over to our parents, her face glowing with anticipation. My mother stood beside my father, clutching an envelope with a huge red bow on it. "Honey, for all your hard work, we wanted to give you something special to start this new chapter of your life," my mother said, handing Amber the envelope. Amber tore it open, her eyes widening as she pulled out a car key attached to a keychain with the BMW logo. She screamed, jumping up and down as my father pointed to the driveway. A brand new white BMW 3 Series with a massive red bow on the hood sat gleaming in the sun. It had to be worth at least $30,000. "Oh my God. I can't believe it!" Amber shrieked, running toward the car. The guests followed, oohing and awing as Amber climbed inside, running her hands over the leather steering wheel. I forced a smile and clapped along with everyone else. I was happy for my sister, really. It wasn't her fault our parents played favorites. But I couldn't help the knot forming in my stomach as I watched her rev the engine while my parents looked on proudly. Later that evening, after most guests had left, I was helping clean up when my father approached me with a serious expression. He held an envelope similar to Amber's, but without the bow. "Jennifer, your mother, and I need to talk to you," he said, gesturing toward the kitchen where my mother waited, arms crossed over her chest. I followed him, wiping my hands on a napkin. My mother's lips were pressed into a thin line as she watched me sit down at the kitchen island. "What's up?" I asked, a sense of dread building in my chest. My father slid the envelope across the counter. "This is for you." I opened it, expecting maybe a token gift card or something to acknowledge my help with the party. Instead, I pulled out what looked like an itemized bill. At the top, in bold letters, "Room and board, outstanding balance." My eyes traveled down the paper, taking in the monthly charges for rent, $500, utilities, $150, food, $300, and miscellaneous expenses, $100, dating back 3 years, when I'd moved back home after losing my marketing job during company-wide layoffs. The total at the bottom, $24,000. I looked up at my parents, sure this was some kind of sick joke. "What is this?" "We've been keeping track of your expenses since you moved back home," my mother said coolly. "It's time you settled your debt." "Debt?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "You never mentioned any rent when I moved back in." "I've been buying groceries, cooking, cleaning." "That doesn't cover the cost of housing an adult," my father interrupted. "You're 25, Jennifer. It's time you took financial responsibility." I stared at them in disbelief, my gaze shifting between them and the $24,000 bill in my trembling hands. Just hours ago, they had gifted my 18-year-old sister a $30,000 car for graduating high school. And now they were billing me for living in my childhood home during a financial crisis. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I made a decision that would change everything. They had no idea what was coming. The bill wasn't really a surprise when I thought about it. The favoritism had always been there, woven into the fabric of our family like an ugly pattern you eventually stop noticing. Looking back, I could trace it to our earliest childhood memories. When I was 7 and Amber was just born, I remember my grandmother visiting with gifts for both of us. I received a coloring book and crayons. Amber got a savings bond for college. The baby needs to start saving early, my grandmother had said, while my parents nodded approvingly. No one mentioned that I might need college savings too. As we grew up, the pattern continued. My straightas were met with casual nods and comments like, "That's what we expect from you, Jennifer." Meanwhile, Amber's C+ would earn her ice cream trips and praise for really trying her best. When I won the state science fair in 8th grade, my parents skipped the awards ceremony because Amber had a cold. Not the flu. A cold. I worked hard anyway, believing that achievement would eventually win their approval. In high school, I juggled honors classes, volleyball team captain responsibilities, and the school newspaper editor position. I graduated as valedictorian with a full scholarship to a state university, though only a partial one that covered tuition but not room and board. "You're so smart, you'll figure it out," my father had said when I asked about covering my dorm costs. I took out loans and worked 2 part-time jobs throughout college, one at the campus bookstore and another waiting tables on weekends. Meanwhile, my parents started Amber's college fund the day she was born. They hired tutors at the first sign of academic struggle and rewarded her mediocre grades with shopping sprees because she tried her best, and not everyone is naturally smart like Jennifer. My college graduation was celebrated with that Olive Garden dinner I mentioned. My mother complained about heartburn halfway through, so we skipped dessert. They gave me a $100 gift card to Target as a graduation gift. "For your new apartment essentials," my mother had said. For years later, they threw Amber a graduation party that rivaled small weddings when she finished high school with her 3.2 GPA. And the BMW, of course. $30,000 sitting in the driveway while I was staring at a bill for $24,000. After college, I'd landed a promising marketing position at a growing tech company. The salary wasn't impressive for an entry-level role, but the growth potential was there. I rented a small apartment with a roommate, faithfully paid my student loans, and started building my professional reputation. Then came the economic downturn. Our company lost 3 major clients in a single quarter. The layoffs started with the newest hires, including me. With just 2 weeks of severance and a competitive job market flooded with experienced marketers who'd also been laid off, my modest savings evaporated quickly. Moving back home was supposed to be temporary. "Just until you get back on your feet," my mother had said as I carried my 2 suitcases into my old bedroom, which had remained largely unchanged since high school. There had never been any mention of rent. Not once. Instead, I'd contributed in other ways, buying groceries weekly, cooking dinner most nights, cleaning the house, driving Amber to her various activities when my parents were busy, and running errands for my mother. I'd been applying for jobs consistently, but the market remained tough. I'd had a few interviews that went well, but ended with the same response: "We've decided to go with a candidate who has more experience." I'd even taken freelance marketing projects when I could find them, carefully saving every dollar. My plan had been to build up enough savings to cover first and last month's rent, plus a security deposit on a new apartment, and have a cushion of at least 3 months of expenses before moving out. I was about 80% of the way to my goal when Amber's graduation arrived. During those 3 years at home, I'd watched my sister continue to be the golden child. My parents bought her a MacBook Pro when she started high school, because she needed it for assignments. They funded her spring break trip to Cancun with her friends, because she worked so hard and deserved a break. They never questioned her spending habits or when she would become financially independent. Meanwhile, They monitored my job search with increasing impatience. "Have you applied anywhere today?" became my mother's standard greeting. My father would scrutinize my freelance earnings, suggesting I wasn't trying hard enough to find full-time employment. If I bought myself anything beyond necessities, even just a $5 coffee, I would return home to subtle comments about frivolous spending. Amber, now graduated and BMW equipped, had developed an entitled attitude that matched our parents' treatment of her. She would leave her dishes in the sink, expecting me to clean them. She would borrow my clothes without asking and return them stained or stretched out. When I confronted her, she would roll her eyes and say, "It's not like you have anywhere important to go anyway." The night of her graduation party, after receiving my shocking bill, I lay in bed scrolling back through years of family photos on my phone. In almost every one, Amber was centered, usually with our parents' arms around her, while I stood slightly apart or took the photo. The visual evidence of my peripheral role in the family hit me harder than the bill itself. "You were never the favorite," I whispered to myself in the darkness. "And you never will be." That realization, as painful as it was, became the first brick in the foundation of my new life. The morning after Amber's graduation party, I woke up early, the $24,000 bill still sitting on my nightstand where I'd left it. I'd barely slept, my mind racing through calculations and options. I could drain my savings account to make a dent in it, but that would destroy all my progress toward independence. I could set up a payment plan, but that would mean staying in this toxic environment even longer. Or I could leave. I found my parents in the kitchen. My father was reading news on his tablet while my mother prepared breakfast. Amber was still asleep, no doubt exhausted from her celebration. The new BMW key sat prominently on the counter, catching the morning light. "Good morning," I said, clutching the bill in my hand. My voice was steadier than I expected. My father glanced up briefly. "Morning." My mother didn't turn from the stove. "There's coffee in the pot." I took a deep breath and placed the bill on the table. "I want to talk about this." My father set his tablet down with a sigh, as if I was inconveniencing him. "What's there to talk about?" "Those are your expenses." "You never mentioned rent when I moved back home," I said. "Not once in 3 years." "I've been contributing, buying groceries, cooking, cleaning." "That doesn't cover your expenses," my mother interrupted, finally turning to face me. "You're an adult, Jennifer. Amber is just starting out." The double standard hit me like a slap. Amber is 18. She's also an adult. "She's different," my father said dismissively. "She needs more support." And I didn't. My voice rose slightly. "I lost my job during mass layoffs. I've been applying everywhere, taking freelance work, saving carefully." "We've carried you long enough," my father cut in. 3 years, Jennifer. Most parents would have kicked you out after one." My mother nodded in agreement. "We're not running a charity here." Just then, Amber shuffled into the kitchen, her hair a mess, still in her pajamas. She yawned dramatically, grabbing her BMW key and admiring it before pouring herself coffee. "What's going on?" she asked, looking between us. "Jennifer is upset about her bill," my father explained. Amber glanced at the paper on the table, then at me, a smirk forming on her face. "Maybe you should learn to stand on your own feet," she said. "You can't live with Mom and Dad forever." The condescension in her voice from my younger sister, who had never paid for anything in her life, was the final straw. "I've been standing on my own feet since I was 18, I replied, my voice quiet but firm. "I worked through college. I paid my own rent until I lost my job in a recession. I've been contributing to this household while searching for work. Meanwhile, you just got a $30,000 car for managing to graduate high school with AB average. Don't talk to your sister that way," my mother snapped. "She worked hard for her grades." "And I didn't?" I asked incredulously. "That came naturally to you," my father said, as if my academic success somehow counted less because it hadn't been a struggle. I looked at each of their faces, my father's irritation, my mother's dismissal, Amber's smugness, and suddenly saw with perfect clarity what I had been denying for years. I would never be valued equally in this family. Never. "I'll be out by the end of the week," I said quietly. My mother scoffed. "And go where? You can barely afford rent here." "I'll figure it out," I replied. I always have. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, my heart pounding, but my mind strangely calm. In my room, I closed the door and leaned against it, taking deep breaths to steady myself. Then I picked up my phone and called Rachel, my best friend since college. "Hey, what's up?" Rachel answered cheerfully. "Do you still have that spare room you mentioned?" I asked, my voice cracking slightly. "Yeah, why?" "Jen, are you okay?" Concern filled her voice. I explained everything, the car, the bill, the confrontation. Rachel listened without interrupting, then said without hesitation, "Move in tomorrow." "Seriously?" "I've been wanting a roommate anyway." Tears of relief filled my eyes. "I can pay rent. I have savings. We'll figure it out," Rachel assured me. "Just get out of that house." After we hung up, I sat on my bed, looking around at the room I'd grown up in. The debate trophies gathering dust on the bookshelf. The faded honor roll certificates pinned to a corkboard. The photo of me at college graduation, just me, because my family had left immediately after the ceremony to get back for Amber's dance recital. I realized I was worth more than this. Worth more than being the family afterthought, the responsible one who was punished for her independence, while my sister was rewarded for her dependence. Worth more than a $24,000 bill while my sister got a $30,000 gift. I pulled my suitcases from the closet and began to pack, a strange sense of lightness filling me despite the circumstances. For the first time in years, I was making a decision solely for myself. Packing was surprisingly emotional. Each item I picked up carried memories, some good, many painful. I was determined to take only what truly mattered, partly for practicality. Rachel's spare room wasn't large, and partly as a symbolic fresh start. I sorted my clothes methodically, selecting versatile pieces for job interviews and everyday wear. Books that had shaped my thinking made the cut, while high school yearbooks stayed behind. I found myself lingering over childhood mementos, a science fair medal, a handmade birthday card from Amber when she was 6 and still looked up to me, a snow globe from the one family vacation where I'd felt truly included. In the back of my closet, I discovered a shoebox I'd forgotten about. Inside were cards from my maternal grandmother, who had passed away when I was 15. She had been the only one who seemed to see me clearly. "You shine so bright, Jennifer," she'd written in my last birthday card from her. "Never let anyone dim your light." I carefully packed the box, her words feeling like a message sent across time. While searching for my birth certificate in my parents' home office, I stumbled upon a larger discovery. In a filing cabinet under Jennifer, I found a stack of mail addressed to me, mail I'd never seen. Job rejection letters, yes, but also 3 interview requests that I'd never known about, dating back months. One was from a marketing firm I'd been particularly excited about. The email address they had for me was incorrect by 1 letter, an error that seemed suspicious now. Even more disturbing was an email printout from another company stating, "Following our conversation about your daughter's application, we've decided to pursue other candidates." The date coincided with a period when my father had been particularly critical of my lack of effort in job searching. Had my parents deliberately sabotaged my job prospects to keep me dependent? The thought made me physically ill. I took photos of everything as evidence, then continued searching. In another folder labeled Jennifer Financial, I found copies of credit card statements from accounts I hadn't opened and student loan documents with unfamiliar signatures that looked vaguely like mine. My hands shook as I photographed these 2. As I was replacing the files, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen below the office. "What are we going to do if she actually leaves?" my mother asked. "She won't," my father replied confidently. "Where would she go?" "She'll cool down, realize she has no options, and agree to a payment plan. We can use that money for Amber's spending allowance at college." My blood ran cold. They'd never intended the bill as a legitimate expense. It was a control tactic, a way to extract money from me for Amber's benefit. Again. I finished packing with renewed determination. By evening, my entire life fit into 2 suitcases, a backpack, and 3 medium boxes. Rachel would arrive in the morning to help me move everything to her apartment. That night, I slept surprisingly well. My decision solidified. The next morning, I carried my first load downstairs as my parents were having breakfast. "What are you doing?" my mother asked, eyes widening at my suitcases. "Leaving," I said simply. "Rachel's picking me up in 20 minutes. My father put down his coffee cup. "Don't be ridiculous, Jennifer. Where will you go? How will you afford it?" "I have savings," I replied. "I've been preparing to move out for months." My mother looked genuinely shocked. "But your bill?" "I'm not paying it," I said calmly. "You never mentioned rent until yesterday." "That's not how agreements work." Amber appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas despite it being nearly 10 a.m. "You're actually leaving?" For the first time, she looked uncertain. "Who's going to help me with my college applications?" The selfishness of the question was so typical that I almost laughed. "I'm sure Mom and Dad will hire someone. They always make sure you have whatever you need." I continued bringing boxes down as my parents followed me around, their shock turning to anger, then to bargaining. "We can reduce the bill," my father offered as I waited by the front door for Rachel. "We were just trying to teach you responsibility," my mother added. I looked at them both, feeling strangely detached. "I've been responsible my entire life. That's never been the problem." When Rachel's car pulled up, I felt a surge of liberation. I loaded my belongings as my family watched from the doorway. Before leaving, I turned to them one last time. "I've spent my whole life trying to earn your approval through achievement, responsibility, and contribution. I finally understand that nothing I do will ever be enough, because the problem isn't me, it's you. I deserve better than this, and I'm going to find it." I didn't raise my voice or cry. I simply stated the truth and walked away, sliding into Rachel's passenger seat. As we drove off, I didn't look back. "You okay?" Rachel asked, reaching over to squeeze my hand. Getting there, I replied, watching my childhood home disappear in the side mirror. Rachel's apartment was a modest 2-bedroom in a safer part of town than I could have afforded on my own. The spare room was small but bright, with a window overlooking a community garden. We spent that first day arranging my limited possessions, turning the empty space into something that felt like mine. That night, sitting on my new twin bed under fresh sheets Rachel had bought as a welcome home gift, I experienced a conflicting wave of emotions: grief for the family relationship I'd never had, relief at escaping toxicity, fear about my uncertain future, and a surprising sense of possibility. The very next day, I received an email response to an application I'd submitted weeks earlier. A financial consulting firm wanted to interview me. The timing felt like cosmic confirmation. 3 days later, dressed in my most professional outfit and armed with a portfolio of my marketing work, I walked into their office. The interviewer, Diane, was impressed by my freelance projects and the way I'd maintained professional development despite my employment gap. "We need someone who can think creatively under pressure," she told me. "Your experience navigating career challenges shows resilience. When can you start?" I left with a job offer, not a dream position, but a solid role with benefits and growth potential. Walking back to Rachel's apartment, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: pride in myself, undiminished by family comparison or criticism. For the first time, my achievements were truly my own. The financial consulting firm wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady. I advised clients on budget management and debt reduction, ironically, skills I'd honed through my own careful financial planning while living at home. My starting salary covered my half of rent at Rachel's place with enough left to rebuild my savings, and the employee benefits meant I could finally see a therapist to process the years of family dynamics. After 2 months of adjusting to my new independent life, fate intervened in the form of a chance meeting. I developed a habit of working at a coffee shop near our apartment on Saturday mornings, enjoying the ambient noise and change of scenery. One such morning, I was so absorbed in creating a client presentation that I didn't notice someone approaching my table until they spoke. "Jennifer?" "Jennifer Walsh." I looked up to see Dr. Mitchell, my favorite economics professor from college. He'd been the one who recognized my aptitude for data analysis and encouraged me to combine it with my marketing degree. "Dr. Mitchell, what are you doing here?" I stood to greet him, genuinely pleased to see a face from my more successful past. "Call me Robert, please." "You're not my student anymore," he said with a warm smile. "I live a few blocks away. Mind if I join you?" Over coffee, we caught up on the last few years. I gave him the sanitized version of my employment gap and current situation, but he seemed to read between the lines. Actually, he said, setting down his cup, this is fortuitous timing. I've been meaning to reach out to alumni with your skill set. He explained that he'd taken a sabbatical from teaching to help launch a tech startup focused on financial literacy tools for young adults. We've got great programmers, but need someone who understands both marketing and financial principles to head operations. Someone who can translate complex concepts into accessible strategies. My pulse quickened. That sounds fascinating. It's challenging work, he admitted. But the potential impact is significant. Would you be interested in discussing it further? The salary is competitive. $85,000 to start, plus equity. I nearly choked on my coffee. That was more than double what I was currently making. I'd definitely be interested, I managed to say professionally, while my mind raced with possibilities. With that salary, I could afford my own place. I could pay off my remaining student loans within a year. I could build a real emergency fund. Great. Let me introduce you to the team next week. When I told Rachel about the encounter that evening, she squealed with excitement. This is the universe rewarding you for standing up for yourself, she declared. You have to take it if they offer. But doubt crept in as the interview approached. My confidence had been systematically undermined for years. What if I wasn't good enough? What if I failed and proved my parents right? You're catastrophizing, my therapist pointed out during our session. Look at the evidence. A respected professor specifically thought of you for this role. Your qualifications match their needs. You've succeeded in challenging circumstances before. Rachel was more direct. Don't let those people live rent-free in your head when you wouldn't let them charge you real rent. The interview with the startup team, 5 passionate professionals in a converted warehouse space, went better than I could have hoped. They were impressed by my dual background in marketing and finance, and my ideas for making their app more user-friendly resonated with their vision. 2 days later, Dr. Mitchell called with the offer. Operations manager, $90,000. They'd raised the salary after our discussion, with equity options and a clear path to operations director if performance targets were met. I accepted on the spot. My first day at Finlit Technologies, the startup's name, was both exhilarating and terrifying. I had my own small office with a standing desk, dual monitors, and a view of the city skyline. The team welcomed me with genuine enthusiasm, and by lunchtime, I was already deep in discussions about streamlining their project management processes. Within weeks, I'd implemented a new efficiency system that reduced redundancies and accelerated their development timeline. The CEO, a former Silicon Valley executive named Mark, called me into his office to personally thank me. You've got a gift for this, he said. We should have hired an operations person months ago, but I'm glad we waited for the right fit. As the months passed, the company grew rapidly. We secured additional funding, expanded our team, and launched a beta version of our app that received glowing reviews from test users. My role expanded accordingly, and I found myself managing a small team of project coordinators. 6 months into my new position, I received my first significant bonus, $15,000 for exceeding quarterly goals. Combined with my careful saving from my regular salary, I had enough for a down payment on a modest, but modern one-bedroom condo in an up-and-coming neighborhood. Moving into my own place, the first property I'd ever owned, felt monumental. Rachel helped me furnish it with a mix of affordable finds and a few quality investment pieces. This is how adults who respect themselves live, she declared as we arranged my new sectional sofa in front of large windows that filled the space with natural light. My new colleagues became friends, people who valued me for my contributions and intelligence rather than measuring me against a favored sibling. We celebrated company milestones with team dinners and weekend hiking trips. I joined a book club and a recreational volleyball league, rebuilding a social life that had withered during my years at home. Meanwhile, my therapy sessions helped me understand the dynamics that had shaped my family relationships. You were parentified early, my therapist explained. Expected to be self-sufficient while your sister was infantilized. Neither role was fair to either of you. I learned to recognize the critical internal voice that sounded suspiciously like my parents and replace it with healthier self-talk. I practiced setting boundaries in small situations to prepare for the larger ones I might face in the future. Throughout this transformation, one thing remained constant: complete silence from my family. No calls, no texts, no emails. At first, I checked my phone compulsively, expecting them to reach out, either to apologize or to escalate their demands. But as days turned to weeks and weeks to months, I realized they were waiting for me to come crawling back. They truly believed I couldn't succeed without them. Their silence became, ironically, the greatest gift they'd ever given me. Without their constant criticism and comparisons, I flourished. My confidence grew along with my professional reputation. I stopped second-guessing my decisions. I learned to trust my judgment. 6 months of silence stretched to a full half-year. I celebrated my 26th birthday with friends who truly cared about me, in a home I owned, with a career on an upward trajectory. For the first time in my adult life, I felt completely at peace with who I was and where I was going. Then my phone rang with Amber's number, and everything changed again. I stared at my phone as Amber's name flashed on the screen. 6 months of silence, and now she was calling at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday? My thumb hovered over the decline button, but curiosity won out. "Hello," I answered cautiously. "Jen." Amber's voice was thick with tears. "I need your help. It's bad. Really bad." My initial instinct was concern. Despite everything, she was still my sister. "Are you hurt? What's going on?" "It's everything," she sobbed. "Dad's business is failing. He's in debt, like serious debt. The bank is threatening foreclosure on the house. And Mom," her voice cracked, "Mom has some health issues. They found something on a scan, and the insurance won't cover the specialist she needs to see." I sat down on my sofa, processing this information. "Where are you calling from?" "I don't recognize this number." "A friend's phone," she admitted. "They repossessed my car last week. I couldn't make the payments." That gave me pause. I thought Mom and Dad were making the payments. They were, but then Dad's business problems started and... She trailed off. "Can you help us? Please? You're doing so well now, and we're desperate." "I need to think about this," I said, my mind racing. "I'll call you tomorrow." After hanging up, I paced my condo, thoughts swirling. Was this genuine or another manipulation? And if it was real, what did I owe them, if anything? I called Rachel, who listened to the situation and then asked pointedly, "Do you think they'd rush to your rescue if the situations were reversed?" "No," I admitted. "But that doesn't mean I should do the same." "True," she conceded. "But you need to protect yourself first. Verify everything before you commit to anything." The next day, I called my therapist for an emergency session. We discussed healthy boundaries and what constituted genuine help versus enabling harmful patterns. "Helping from a place of guilt or obligation often perpetuates dysfunction," she explained. "Helping from a place of clarity and boundaries can be healing for everyone involved." Armed with this perspective, I began my research. I contacted a former colleague of my father's who confirmed the business was indeed failing, but not for the reasons Amber had implied. There were rumors of mismanagement and possibly gambling debts. The colleague seemed uncomfortable sharing more, but suggested I be careful about getting financially involved. Next, I discreetly reached out to my mother's sister, Aunt Linda, who I'd always been close with. She confirmed my mother's health scare, but added an important detail: the specialist issue isn't about insurance. It's that your father emptied their health savings account, and they can't afford the deductible. I spent a week gathering information, creating a clearer picture of my family's situation. The house was indeed in pre-foreclosure. My father's business had lost major clients due to missed deadlines and quality issues, problems that coincided with his increasing visits to a casino 2 hours away. My mother's condition was concerning but treatable if addressed promptly. Most surprisingly, Amber had dropped out of college after her first semester, something my parents had hidden from extended family out of embarrassment. She'd been living at home, supposedly taking a gap year, but actually working part-time at a local boutique and spending most of her earnings on clothes and parties. Armed with this knowledge, I agreed to meet Amber at a cafe halfway between our locations. She arrived looking surprisingly put together for someone in a family crisis: designer sunglasses, immaculate nails, and clothes that still had the polished look of recent purchases. "Thank you for coming," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "I wasn't sure you would." "I needed to understand the situation better," I replied. "Why didn't you tell me you dropped out of college?" Her eyes widened. "How did you?" "I did my research," I said simply. "Why did you drop out?" She looked down at her hands. "College was harder than I expected. I couldn't keep up with the workload, and then when Dad's business problems started and they couldn't help me as much. So this call for help, was it your idea or theirs?" I asked. Her silence was answer enough. "Amber," I sighed, "I can't just write a check to solve problems that have been building for years. Especially when no one is being fully honest with me." "We're desperate, Jen," she finally admitted. "Dad asked me to call because he thought you'd be more likely to help me than him." The manipulation was so transparent it was almost laughable. "And the rent bill they gave me? What was that really about?" Amber had the grace to look ashamed. "They needed money for my college expenses. The bill was supposed to guilt you into paying something, anything. They never expected you to actually leave." I took a deep breath, processing the calculated nature of their actions. "I need to speak with Mom and Dad directly." We arranged a family dinner at a neutral restaurant the following weekend. I arrived early, choosing a table in a quiet corner where we could talk privately. My parents arrived looking simultaneously haggard and defensive, my father's once confident posture now slightly stooped, my mother's carefully maintained appearance showing signs of strain. The conversation began awkwardly, with shallow inquiries about my job and apartment that quickly gave way to thinly veiled requests. "We're so proud of how well you're doing," my mother said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "You always were the capable one." "We could use some of that capability now," my father added, attempting his former authoritative tone. "A temporary loan to get the business back on track. I can offer interest, of course." I listened as they outlined their financial needs: $50,000 to save the business, $15,000 for medical expenses, $10,000 to catch up on the mortgage. They spoke as if my agreement was a foregone conclusion, the only question being the terms. "Before I consider this," I said when they finally paused, "I need to understand something. Amber tells me the rent bill was created to drive me out so you could use my rent money for her college expenses. Is that true?" My father shifted uncomfortably. "We needed to motivate you to contribute. You were living rent-free while we were struggling to provide for Amber's future. You never mentioned rent until the day you gave me that bill," I pointed out. "And you were clearly not struggling when you bought her a BMW. "That was before the business problems," my mother said quickly. "Was it?" I challenged. "Because I've learned the business has been having issues for over a year." The conversation grew increasingly tense as I pressed for honest answers, and they offered justifications and deflections. Amber sat silently, occasionally checking her phone under the table. Finally, my father's frustration boiled over. "What does any of this matter? The point is we need help now, and you're in a position to provide it." "That's what family does." "Is it?" I asked quietly. "Is that what you did when I lost my job and needed a place to stay? Or did you secretly track expenses to use against me later?" As the evening progressed, more truths emerged. A former business partner of my father had reached out to me after hearing I was back in contact with the family. He revealed that my father had been accused of embezzling company funds, another reason for the business's decline. My high school English teacher, now a friend on social media, sent a message sharing that my parents had been openly disparaging me to community members, claiming I was ungrateful and abandoned the family during difficult times. Most disturbing was an anonymous email containing evidence that my parents had applied for loans using my identity during the time I lived with them, explaining the credit card statements I'd found in their files. I confronted them with this information at our next meeting, this time with my financial lawyer present. The evidence was irrefutable, and their denials quickly transformed into blame. "We were desperate," my father insisted. "We would have paid those loans before they affected your credit. You should be grateful we didn't charge you rent from the beginning," my mother added, her voice bitter. "We gave you a free place to stay for months before we started keeping track." My lawyer outlined the seriousness of identity theft and credit fraud, explaining that I had grounds for legal action. The color drained from my parents' faces. I don't want to pursue legal remedies, I said carefully. But I need guarantees this will never happen again. I'm willing to help with Mom's medical expenses, directly to the providers, not to you, if you agree to 3 conditions: complete financial transparency going forward, family therapy to address the underlying issues, and a written acknowledgement of the identity theft with a plan to rectify it. My father's face hardened. So you're bribing us to admit wrongdoing and submit to therapy? After everything we've done for you? I'm offering a path forward that protects everyone's interests, I corrected him. It's your choice whether to take it. We raised you better than this, my mother said coldly. To turn your back on family in need. You raised me to be independent and self-sufficient, I interrupted. I'm simply following your example. They left that meeting without agreeing to my terms, my father's parting words still ringing in my ears. If this is how you want it, consider yourself disowned. Again. 2 weeks passed without contact from my parents, but Amber texted regularly with updates on our mother's health and not-so-subtle reminders of their financial strain. I maintained my position. I would help with medical bills paid directly to providers, but only after they acknowledged the identity theft and agreed to therapy. Finally, they suggested another family dinner, this time at an upscale restaurant I knew they couldn't afford. It was clearly an attempt to project success they didn't have, but I agreed to meet them. The atmosphere was tense from the moment I arrived. My parents had dressed in their best clothes, and Amber wore a new outfit I recognized from an expensive boutique's window display. They'd already ordered appetizers and wine, creating the appearance of casual affluence. You look well, my mother said, her eyes critically assessing my simple but professional attire. That startup must be treating you nicely. It is, I confirmed. We just secured another round of funding. Always the successful one, my father commented, his tone making it sound more accusation than compliment. Unlike some of us who've hit temporary setbacks. The passive-aggressive comments continued throughout the meal, interspersed with reminiscences about family moments that had never happened the way they described. Remember that wonderful trip to the lake when you were 12? My mother asked nostalgically, conveniently omitting that I'd spent most of that vacation watching Amber while they socialized with friends. As dessert arrived, my father finally got to the point. I've been thinking about your business acumen, he said, swirling his wine. Perhaps we could work together. A loan, let's call it an investment, of $100,000 would save my business and give you a stake in a company with decades of history. The figure was double what he'd initially requested, and there was no mention of my mother's medical needs, which had supposedly been the urgent concern. What about Mom's treatment? I asked. We've managed to arrange that, he said vaguely. This is about preserving the family legacy now. Later that evening, after I'd firmly declined the investment opportunity and returned to my condo, Amber called. Why couldn't you just help him? She demanded. He's been practicing that pitch for days. Because it wasn't honest, I replied. And the amount suddenly doubled with no explanation. There was a pause. He thought since your company got more funding, you could afford more, she admitted. Then, in a moment of rare candor, she added, they put me up to calling you that first night. Dad said to emphasize Mom's health problems and my car being repossessed. He said you'd feel guilty and want to help. And did they tell you to hide that you dropped out of college? Or that Dad's business problems are partly due to gambling? Another pause. How did you know about the gambling? I did my research, Amber. Something you might consider doing before getting involved in their schemes. The next day, I received a disturbing call from my father's business partner, Marcus Taylor. He'd heard through mutual connections that my father was claiming I would be investing in the business. I felt I should warn you, Marcus said gravely. There are issues beyond what you probably know. The gambling is bad, yes, but there are also pending investigations into some financial irregularities. Embezzlement? I asked, recalling our earlier conversation. Among other things, he confirmed. I'd advise against putting any money into that business. It could make you liable for issues you had nothing to do with. The warnings continued to accumulate. My former high school teacher, Mrs. Patterson, reached out again after running into my mother at the grocery store. Your mother was telling anyone who would listen that you're coming back to work for your father's company, she reported. She made it sound like you'd failed in the city and were crawling back. Most alarming was an anonymous email I received containing evidence of loan applications submitted in my name just the previous week after our discussions about the identity theft. Attached were copies of applications for a $50,000 personal loan and a $25,000 home equity line of credit, both using my information and forged signatures. I immediately contacted my lawyer, who advised filing a police report and placing fraud alerts on my credit. This is beyond family dysfunction, he warned. This is criminal activity. Armed with this evidence, I arranged to meet my parents, not at a restaurant, but at my lawyer's office. They arrived looking indignant, but their expressions changed quickly when I presented the loan applications. This ends now, I said firmly. I have two options for you. We can handle this as a family matter with strict conditions, or I can press charges for identity theft and fraud. My father's face reddened. You wouldn't dare. We're your parents. Parents don't steal their children's identities, my lawyer interjected calmly. Ms. Walsh has been more than reasonable given the circumstances. I outlined my terms. They would sign an affidavit acknowledging the identity theft and agree to credit monitoring that would alert me to any applications in my name. They would attend family therapy with a specialist in financial abuse. And they would create a legitimate repayment plan for my mother's medical expenses, which I would help with under these conditions. This is extortion, my father sputtered. This is a lifeline, I corrected him. One you don't deserve, but I'm offering it anyway. My mother, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. And if we refuse? My lawyer answered for me. Then Ms. Walsh will file a police report today, and you'll likely face criminal charges for fraud, identity theft, and possibly elder financial abuse given the pattern of behavior. They left without signing the agreement, my father's parting shot a threat to tell everyone what kind of daughter you really are. That evening, I received a text from Amber. They're saying they're going to disown you for real this time. Cut you out of the will and everything. I laughed to spite myself. What will? Dad's in debt, the house is in foreclosure, and they've burned through any savings they had. I know, she responded after a long pause. I think I'm starting to see things more clearly now. It was the first genuine connection we'd had in years. The months following that confrontation were transformative, both professionally and personally. Finlit Technologies continued its upward trajectory, and with it, my career. Our app launched to widespread acclaim, helping thousands of young adults navigate financial literacy. My role expanded to Chief Operations Officer, complete with a substantial salary increase and additional equity in the company that was now valued at 8 figures. Business publications began to take notice of our success. When Forbes featured our company in an article about innovative financial technology, they included a profile of the executive team. There I was, Jennifer Walsh, COO, described as a rising star in financial operations with a unique blend of marketing insight and analytical precision. I saved the magazine, not out of vanity, but as a tangible reminder of how far I'd come. The article now hangs framed in my office alongside my degree and professional certifications. With my increased financial security, I purchased a stylish 2-bedroom condo in one of the city's most desirable neighborhoods, a stark contrast to the suburban home where I'd felt so unwelcome. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic city views, and the modern kitchen became my sanctuary for weekend cooking experiments. It was everything my parents' house wasn't: peaceful, exclusively mine, and free from emotional landmines. More meaningful than the material success was the scholarship fund I established through our company's charitable foundation. The New Beginnings Scholarship provided financial assistance to students from dysfunctional families, particularly those who lacked parental support. The application included an essay about overcoming family adversity, and reading the submissions reminded me that my experience, while painful, was far from unique. Your personal story inspired this, didn't it? Mark, our CEO, asked when I presented the scholarship proposal. Sometimes the hardest beginnings lead to the strongest futures, I replied, neither confirming nor denying, but knowing he understood. 6 months after our confrontation at the lawyer's office, I returned home one evening to find Amber sitting on the floor outside my condo door, a single duffel bag beside her. Her designer clothes had been replaced by worn jeans and a faded t-shirt, her carefully maintained appearance now disheveled. "They kicked me out," she said simply. "I couldn't afford rent, and when I suggested they were being hypocritical after the way they treated you." She shrugged, leaving the rest unsaid. I invited her in, ordered takeout, and listened as she explained the past months. Our parents had lost the house to foreclosure and moved into a small apartment. My father's business had closed entirely amid mounting debt and legal troubles. They'd been depending on Amber's boutique salary to supplement their income, growing increasingly demanding until the arrangement became untenable. "I didn't know where else to go," she admitted. "Everyone else just sees the spoiled girl with the BMW. Where is the BMW now?" I asked gently. "Repossessed months ago," she said, staring into her container of pad thai. "Nothing I owned was ever really mine, was it? It was all just things they could take away when I didn't meet their expectations." The realization was clearly fresh and painful for her, a lesson I'd learned years earlier through different circumstances. "You can stay here for now," I offered. "The guest room is yours while you figure out your next steps." Relief washed over her face, quickly followed by wariness. "What's the catch? Do I have to pay rent?" "Because I don't have much saved and—" "No catch," I interrupted. "But I won't be your new parents either. This is temporary support while you create your own path forward." The conversation shifted to practical matters, her job prospects, education goals, financial literacy. For the first time, we spoke as adults rather than as the roles we'd been assigned in our family dynamic. "There's an entry-level position opening in our customer support team," I mentioned casually. "It's not glamorous, but it's stable with benefits and tuition assistance if you want to go back to school." "You'd help me get a job at your company?" she asked incredulously. "After everything?" "I'd help you get an interview," I clarified. "The rest would be up to you." Amber's initial resistance, customer service isn't really my thing, gave way to humble acceptance when she realized the alternative was continued dependence or precarious employment. She interviewed, got the position, and surprised both of us by excelling at it. Her natural charm, previously channeled into manipulation, translated well to customer relations when directed positively. 2 weeks after Amber moved in, my parents made their inevitable approach. A carefully worded email expressed their desire to heal family wounds and establish a new understanding. Reading between the lines, it was clear they'd learned about my company's recent valuation and my increased public profile. I agreed to meet them at a coffee shop, neutral territory with time limitations. They arrived with practiced expressions of contrition that didn't quite reach their eyes. "We've been doing a lot of thinking," my father began, his tone measured. "Perhaps we were too harsh. Families should support each other through difficulties." My mother nodded earnestly. "We miss you, Jennifer. And we're so proud of your accomplishments." The praise felt hollow after years of criticism and recent manipulation attempts. "What exactly are you proposing?" I asked directly. They exchanged glances before my father spoke again. "A fresh start. Regular family dinners, holiday gatherings. We're not getting any younger, and family becomes more important with age." "And your financial situation?" I prompted, knowing it wouldn't go unmentioned. Another glance between them. "We're stable for now," my father claimed unconvincingly. "Though of course, if you wanted to help your aging parents as a gesture of goodwill." I took a sip of my coffee, gathering my thoughts. "I'm open to rebuilding a relationship," I said finally. "But it would need to be based on honesty and respect, with clear boundaries." I outlined my conditions. They would need to acknowledge past behaviors without justifications or excuses. Any financial discussions would be off the table for at least a year while we rebuilt trust. And family therapy would be mandatory if they wanted more than occasional superficial contact. "Therapy?" my father scoffed. "We don't need strangers telling us how to be a family." "That's your choice," I replied calmly. "These are my terms for meaningful reconciliation." My mother reached across the table to grasp my hand. "Darling, we're your parents. Can't we just put the past behind us without all these conditions?" I gently withdrew my hand. "The past is precisely why these conditions exist." I'm offering a path forward, not a reset button. They left dissatisfied, but not entirely defeated. Over the subsequent weeks, they made occasional attempts to circumvent my boundaries, calling with emergencies that turned out to be minor inconveniences, sending guilt-inducing emails about family obligations, even showing up at my office once under the pretense of surprising me for lunch. Each attempt was met with the same calm reiteration of my terms. Eventually, faced with the realization that I wouldn't budge, they reluctantly agreed to family therapy. The first session was tense and unproductive, with my parents presenting a sanitized version of our history to the therapist. But as the sessions continued, layers of dysfunction began to peel away. We learned that my father had grown up with his own emotionally abusive father who had valued him only for achievements. My mother had been raised by parents who had faced financial insecurity and had instilled in her a desperate need for stability at any cost. We projected our own wounds onto our children, the therapist summarized in our fifth session. Jennifer became the repository for achievement expectations, while Amber became the focus of protection and indulgence. Neither role served either child well. These insights didn't excuse their behavior, but helped explain the complex dynamics that had shaped our family. Understanding didn't automatically create healing, but it provided a foundation upon which healing might eventually be built. Amber's personal growth during this period was remarkable. Living independently, she'd moved into her own apartment after 3 months, managing her finances responsibly, and advancing at work gave her a confidence I'd never seen in her before. Without our parents' constant enabling and protection, she discovered her own resilience. "I never had the chance to fail on my own terms before," she told me over dinner one evening. Failure was this terrifying thing that needed to be avoided at all costs, so Mom and Dad just cleared every obstacle. I never learned how to overcome anything. A year after our family's initial crisis, the landscape had transformed completely. My parents lived modestly but stably, having finally confronted my father's gambling addiction and financial mismanagement. Our relationship remained a work in progress, civil but guarded, with carefully maintained boundaries. Amber and I had developed something new and unexpected, a genuine adult friendship based on mutual respect rather than forced family roles. As for me, I'd found something more valuable than revenge or validation. I discovered that the most powerful response to being undervalued wasn't proving my worth to others, it was recognizing it myself and building a life that reflected that worth. The $24,000 rent bill that had once seemed like such a devastating betrayal now felt like a twisted gift, the catalyst that had propelled me toward authentic independence and success. My parents had intended it as a control mechanism, never imagining it would instead set me free. My journey from betrayal to triumph wasn't about getting even, it was about getting ahead, breaking cycles, and creating something better than what I'd been given. The true revenge wasn't in watching my family struggle or even in surpassing their expectations. It was in building a life where their approval no longer mattered. What's your family story? Have you ever had to set boundaries with loved ones who didn't treat you right? Comment below and share your experience. You never know who might need to hear they're not alone in these struggles. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges, and share with someone who might need a reminder of their own worth. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we're born into. We're born into. We're born into. We're born into. We're born into.